Unique, and today I'm ranking things because I love doing that. Today it's all about commodity fragrances and everything they have to offer, specifically the Scent Space line. So if you love the Scent Space line or you're curious about it, stick around. I have thoughts, I have feelings, I have opinions, I have some insights. Yeah, insights. Commodity fragrances really began in 2013 with its Kickstarter campaign where it promised to change the fragrance industry forever. And with that campaign and raising over $50,000 from 740 backers, Commodity Fragrances was really born. It initially started as a direct-to-consumer brand where you could buy fragrances like gin and wool from its website, and it eventually became Sephora's rising star. And that's where we are now. We can find Commodity on its own website, yes, but also at places like Sephora. It initially shuttered its doors in 2019 but relaunched in 2020 and has taken off since then. I'd been interested in Commodity but hadn't made any real moves to try their fragrances because for the most part their ethos just wasn't in line with my own when it came to fragrances. Now here's the thing, I love a traditional fragrance. Give me a good floral, tuberose, a rose, a jasmine any day to keep it real simple so I can feel pretty and confident in my real life. I'm not looking to necessarily push the envelope when it comes to fragrances. I'm not looking to change the game and discover something that's never been done before. I just want an accessory to my outfit and to myself that I can enjoy and play with and feel good about. And in a lot of ways, Commodity presented a challenge for me because just from the names themselves, it didn't seem as if they would be right for me personally. But I decided to take the plunge anyway because I can't claim to love fragrances if I'm not willing to push the envelope at least every now and then. The Scent Space line is so fun. Getting one of those discovery sets and playing around with the fragrances, trying things, making notes, testing it. They send you this like little book and the strips to test on. It's such an exciting way of going about testing fragrances, and I wish everybody else would do the same thing. I feel like Commodity gets it. They want their customers to try things, test things, play with fragrances, discover what they like. It's a real discovery set, and sometimes I wish these basic discovery sets that are just the little spray things would do a little better. They also give much bigger samples than most, so you get a lot more juice for the money and you can play with the fragrances, try them out, test them out for a lot longer than a lot of the others that are out there. I just think it's such a good deal when it comes to discovery sets. Now, do I think I want to pay $185 for a full-size bottle of some of these fragrances? Most of them not so much, but that's another hill to jump over when I get there. In the meantime, let me enjoy these discovery sets because they're fantastic. So what is Commodity Scent Space? This is how the company describes it. Take control of your sense projection, of the space your scent takes up around you, of who else experiences your scent with Scent Space. Each Commodity fragrance is available in 3 different Scent Space classification: personal, expressive, and bold. You can decide if you want something that discreetly stays close to your skin, fills the room for a statement, or falls somewhere in between. Issues with Commodity is that they label everything as a unisex fragrance, and I think what they're trying to communicate is that anybody can wear anything, which I think is true. But just like they're wanting to disrupt the fragrance community, I think some labels matter, and unisex usually in my mind means a fragrance sits somewhere between masculine and feminine in terms of the notes it gives. But in the number 6 position is a fragrance that I think skews very masculine and is not unisex at all, and that is Book. Book was just not for me. It is a woody aromatic fragrance that mixes things like cedar, which is a darker wood, sandalwood, musk, and eucalyptus acid. It is so dark and deep and in my mind very masculine that I'm not sure who this is for other than men who like woody fragrances. I was just not a fan of this one, and I wasn't a fan of any of them. But what's the difference between the personal, the expressive, and the bold version? So let's start off with the personal. The personal was very light. You could barely smell it. It really did blend into your skin. It was slightly sweeter, and it was it was there. It wasn't doing very much in my mind, and I didn't see the point of anybody wanting to wear this, but I guess there are fans of it. The expressive version was strange to me because it went in a very camphor direction. It had eucalyptus in it, and it was very minty and medicinal in the fragrance that it was giving. So mixing that with darker woods like cedar just made it a very heavy fragrance in my mind, and it headed in a direction I did not expect. Funnily enough, when we get to the bold version, the room filling version of this fragrance, it pairs back on the eucalyptus, and what we have instead is tea. So something a little bit greener and less minty and less medicinal with that heavy wood. I found the bold version of this fragrance far easier to take than the expressive. Overall though, they were just a no for me. In the number 5 spot is paper, and I didn't mind paper. It wasn't like I disliked it the way that I disliked book. It was just that the performance on this was very weak. I found that it disappeared on my skin within 2 to 3 hours, and the idea of spending the kind of money that the commodity fragrances cost for a 2 or 3 hour wear just did not make sense to me, and it just sort of felt like a waste. Like, you could get a lot of these elements in fragrances with a lot more longevity. But what did it smell like? Now, this is also a woody fragrance, but the woodiness is paired all the way back in paper compared to book, and it isn't as dark and medicinal and spicy and aromatic as book. So what we get here is ISOE Super, which is a sort of skin scent, molecule scent that some people have the capacity to smell and other people have a harder time smelling. I think the ISOE Super and the musk in here is really nice. It lays a nice foundation. Paper Expressive to me was the weakest of the three, and it disappeared the fastest, which was surprising. Paper Personal, the one that's meant to sit closest to your skin, I thought was the most pleasant of the bunch. You have that sweetness from the sandalwood and a bit of powderiness, and that is really what you were getting. In Paper Bold, the one that is meant to project more, you definitely got that projection, and we have a very strong amount of vetiver, so greenness and woodiness, along with other woods in here that makes it stand out a bit more. In the number 4 spot is Velvet. Now, I'm not cool enough for Velvet, let me just be real. This is a fantastic fragrance. It's just not one I would necessarily want to have in my collection because it isn't something that I would reach for on a regular basis, but it is a lovely fragrance if the notes are the kind of thing that you are looking for. So what's the difference with these? Now, number 1, the performance and the projection on these are fantastic. I wore each of these and they sat on my skin really, really well and lasted the entire day in a cooler temperature, colder temperature even, and I really enjoyed wearing these. The expressive version of Velvet to be the most intense of the three, honestly, and I think it's the cloves in the opening because it lasts the whole time you're wearing it. It just didn't go away. So even though it's listed in the top notes of this fragrance, I experienced it for the entire wear of it. It also has black amber, which can give you a bit of smokiness in your fragrance, and it has heliotrope, which adds a bunch of powderiness. It's a really pleasant, lovely fragrance in my opinion. I think it could use a bit more sweetness, so it's not one that I purchased for myself, but I really did enjoy wearing it. The bold version, way more to my liking. There is rose in the bold version that is ratcheted all the way up, so we have that black amber. Instead of heliotrope, we get rose, so we don't have that powderiness and fluffiness, which I think I prefer in this case because you do have a bit of air and cloud-like quality from the black amber because it's so smoky. So I think with the rose, it adds this kind of cool sophistication, sexy sophistication that I really enjoyed in the bold version of this fragrance, and I think it's way better than the expressive. Now in Velvet Personal, everything was really pared back. The amber is very pronounced in this one. It also has rose, it also has almond. It was pretty, it was pleasant, there was nothing exciting about it. I can see why it would land as the personal version of this fragrance. It was nice, but it wasn't special. Have you liked the video yet? Go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, do all the things, but keep watching. Now in the number 3 spot, we have Milk. I know, people love Milk. They swear by it. It's one of their favorite fragrances. I get it, especially if you love lactonic fragrances. I can see how Milk appeals to so many. As I've mentioned before, gourmands aren't my favorite. I don't dislike them. I wear them occasionally. They are not my go-to. And so this is where Milk lands as a gourmand fragrance for me. The other two that are left are definitely more my style and more in keeping with what I enjoy. So here we have Milk in the number 3 spot. And in this line, I think the strong version of this fragrance goes easily to Milk Bold. Milk Expressive, Milk Personal do not hold a candle to Milk Bold. And why is that? Milk Bold just ratchets up all the things you might want from a gourmand fragrance. Number 1, it is the sweetest of the bunch and it's the smokiest. It is woody, it is smoky, it is sweet. It commits to smelling almost like charred marshmallows, and I think that's what you kind of want if you're getting this fragrance. Everything else just pairs everything back in a way that I think is completely unnecessary, or maybe not unnecessary, just not as much to my liking. Milk Personal is barely sweet. It's just undercurrent of sweetness to it that I think is nice for an everyday fragrance where you don't want to really smell like much of anything. I think this would work if you don't like the smell of perfumes that much. This sort of adds to your skin and gives it this mildly sweet fragrance without doing way too much. That's what you get from Milk Personal, but for me, as somebody who wants their perfumes to make a statement, it doesn't make enough of a statement for me. Milk Expressive is also sweet, but it doesn't have the woodiness or smokiness to balance everything out. So even though you have tonka bean and woods and amber in this fragrance, it's just a sort of flat, milky, lactonic sweetness that is kind of underwhelming. The reason Milk is even in the number 3 spot is because of the bold version. Had it been for the expressive or personal, it would have been closer to the bottom of this list. They were just underwhelming. In the number 2 spot, we have Gold. Now, Gold is the fragrance in this line that I would say is the most like me. I have fragrances in my collection that smell like this. I would happily wear this to work on a regular basis, in the daytime on a regular basis. I fully enjoyed all 3 fragrances from the Gold line. I enjoyed the Bold, Expressive, and Personal, but my favorite of the 3 was Expressive by a mile. Here's the thing, when I try a fragrance for the first time and I'm wearing it to test it, usually a name, moniker, phrase comes to mind that makes me sort of conceptualize what I think this fragrance is. And the name for me for Gold was Statement Rings, meaning if you're the kind of person who loves a statement ring, you'll probably love Gold. Here we are. I got a lot of statement rings all right now. Gold was just right up my alley and fit my personality perfectly in a lot of ways, and Expressive especially. So what's in here? It's mostly a vanilla musk woody fragrance. The vanilla is very pronounced. There is some juniper in the Expressive to add a bit of greenness and aromatic quality that reads very floral, almost like jasmine or lily of the valley in here. And I really enjoyed that vanilla pseudo floral element coming together with amber and woods. It was a really just basic in the best way. It's a very everyday fragrance for me personally that I could wear out on a regular basis without having to overthink it. I really did enjoy this one. So Gold Bold for me, love the name. Gold Bold for me was also a love. It's definitely more of a nighttime fragrance. It has things like saffron, it has heavier woods and amber in it. You don't have the fresh aromatic that you had from the juniper, so it's a lot heavier and feels very much like a nighttime time fragrance in its heaviness. It reminded me a little bit of Jazz Club from Maison Margiela. It reminded me a bit of By the Fireplace, but less so. And I really did enjoy this one. It is less like me than the expressive version, but if I were to lean into a woodier fragrance, it would be something like this that sort of blended in some vanilla for sweetness and some saffron and some green notes to make it a little bit lighter and a little bit more feminine in a way that we didn't get from book or paper. For Gold Personal, we have the return of ISOE Super, so something that's a bit more skin scent, and we have mild woodiness, a mild sweetness from the vanilla, a mild aromaticness from the saffron, but everything is so restrained you can barely smell it. And even as you are covering yourself, showering yourself with this fragrance, it doesn't project a ton, which is the intention. So for me, it was a no-go because it just doesn't do as much as I need my fragrances to do, but it is a very pleasant one. In the number one spot, you might have guessed because it's the only one left for me, is Moss. I was obsessed when I smelled this. I thought it was such a stunning, beautiful fragrance. Now I know green notes are a little bit, I don't know, controversial because they aren't for everybody, and sometimes it can be associated with body odor, so a lot of women specifically don't love a green scent. I, on the other hand, am such a fan of a fantastically made green scent, and this was no exception. My favorite of the three is Moss Expressive by far. It is just such a pretty fragrance. It is bright, it is fresh, it is effervescent. It opens up with citrus, really clean and open, and then we get into some oak moss, which is this fresher green fragrance, which I absolutely love. Now I understand, again, not for everybody, but I thought the combination of the two made this so bright and lively, and it would make a fantastic fragrance for the beach, to be outdoors every day. It's such a bright, sunny fragrance in my opinion, and I absolutely loved it. I also enjoyed Moss Bold, just to a slightly lesser extent, because instead of getting that really pronounced oak moss that is like bright, fresh greenness, we have a very dirty patchouli in here that is heavy. So you have to love patchouli and sort of that cut grass greenness you can sometimes get from patchouli from this fragrance. And for me, it's not an everyday type of thing that I'd want to wear because it does feel very, very heavy. Now, I also loved the personal version. I think of all the personal versions in the Scent Space line, Moss Personal like kicked it up a notch in my opinion. And here's why. The greenness in this is distinct from the other two. So instead of a recycling of fragrances and notes either pulled back or ratcheted up, in this one we have a very distinct greenness, and it's this tea smell, the smell you get when you're brewing tea, green tea and herbal tea together. That's what this smells like, with a little bit of sugar. It is fantastic in my opinion. I think it's a great at-home scent because it gives such a comforting smell to me, and I absolutely loved this one because it was so different from the other two versions of Moss that you were getting something very different from all three versus turned up or turned down versions of the exact same thing. But Moss reminds me of Matcha Meditation from Maison Margiela in a lot of ways. I really do enjoy both, but I find Matcha Meditation to be a bit creamier. It's more like an almond milk latte with like mate tea in it. Either way, I just love me a green scent. I wish everybody else would just get on board with how great they are. So that's my ranking of the Commodity Scent Space line from my least favorite to my most favorite: book, paper, velvet, milk, gold, ending in my number one favorite, Moss. I know that's maybe a controversial choice because Moss doesn't often feature as one of the fragrances people prefer, but I will say if you do love green scents or you're exploring green scents, Moss is a fantastic version of green scents across the spectrum. So whether you love mate tea green, oak moss green, cut grass green. You find them all here, and it's really fantastic. Most, if not all, of the Scent Space fragrances commodity does have travel sizes selling for about 34 Canadian, and they have 100 ml bottles for about $184. In my book, that is very expensive, but I find that if you're going to be supporting a niche brand, this is par for the course, and in fact it is less expensive than many of the niche brands out there. As the bottles, they aren't my favorite. They're pretty basic. I really do prefer something a bit more artistic and over the top and exciting that make really beautiful decorative pieces, and you aren't really getting that with these Scent Space bottles or any of the bottles from this brand. But I still think that they're worth exploring if you're interested in a really novel approach to fragrances, because they are doing what they planned to do, which is disrupting the fragrance industry, and I love to see it. Thanks so much for stopping by. I really enjoyed making this video, mostly because I just love ranking perfumes, and I hope you got something out of it that you didn't know already about the commodity Scent Space line. I hope you come back for more videos. Like, comment, subscribe, and keep coming back. I plan to keep ranking things because that is one of my favorite things to do.